I'm Radhika Gosavi, your host for this podcast. Welcome to our first episode. Today, we have a very special guest, Mr. Mahesh Kale, a national award-winning Indian classical vocalist who cares deeply about making a positive difference in the world. Stay tuned as we explore the connections between music, education, and technology from a cognitive lens. First, here is Professor Sridhar Iyer with a short description of the podcast.
Welcome to this series of podcasts. First of all, the background behind me is IIT Bombay for those of you who have been unable to visit. So there is a hill on campus, and this is the view from the from that hill. And I am Sridhar Iyer, a professor in the Department of Education Technology. I currently also head that department. So it's a 10-year-old department, and we currently have a PhD and an MTech program. And we work in various areas like technology enhanced learning of thinking skills, teacher use of education technology, education data analytics, and also play with cool things like AR, VR, and mixed reality equipment for the purpose of education. So for this podcast, uh, the interdisciplinary program is launching this Talk Brainy to Me, which is a new video interview podcast. This is actually the brainchild of Dr. Radhika Gosavi, who is a visiting faculty member in our department for this semester. So the basic idea of this podcast is that there are 7.9 billion people in this world, and each has a different perspective. So as a student, a teacher, a leader, or an individual, it's important to see things in a different light. So this allows us to learn more about the world and also deeply connects us with each other. So the idea behind the podcast is to feature prominent musicians, social workers, actors, and athletes, amongst others, who are working in different fields at the forefront of their field, and ask the one question that is in common, which is like, what is connecting that? The science, the education, and the technology. So we hope that through Talk Brainy to Me, you'll hear thought-provoking conversations in which experts discuss their experiences and perspectives on topics important for the advancement in education and technology from a lens of how our brain learns. So that is the unique perspective of this podcast. Okay, and we are also hoping that this podcast serves as a source of motivation and inspires people to form these interdisciplinary collaborations, which actually fuel the changes in the world. So having said that about the podcast, let me say a couple of lines about Dr. Radhika Gosavi. So she is an educational neuroscientist and a visiting faculty member at IIT Bombay. So even though she was online, she could not come physically to join us. She actually taught a course, a full-fledged course this semester called Educational Neuroscience to our education technology students. Through her research, Radhika is interested in understanding the cognitive and neural processes that underlie learning and development. As a scientist and educator, she is interested in exploring topics, questions, ideas, and stories that are impacting both education and technology. She aims to bring researchers, educators, artists, and technology professionals together to build creative educational models. So Radhika is also passionate about supporting equitable learning and empowering students and teachers for a brighter future. She is originally from Mumbai, but grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area where she now resides. Okay, so more information you can visit radhikagosavi.com. So with that introduction, I'll hand over to Radhika and invite you to say more about the podcast and take it from here. Over to you, Radhika.
Thank you so much. I am very excited that I have the opportunity to do this and have all the support from the department as well as the university, and have exciting guests like Mr. Mahesh Kale, who's here on our first episode. So I want to kind of give you a little bit of a background about what we're going to tell you a little bit about Mahesh, and then get started. So this is really, I think, a great, meaningful way to kick off this podcast episode, all the podcast episodes, because, if we think about it, music is something that's a companion for all of us, right, in India and around the world. Furthermore, music is shown to really impact how our brain learns in so many different ways. The scientific data shows that music is helpful for learning math concepts, learning language, remembering information, paying attention to a whole variety of things. We also know that there's many areas and pathways in the brain that are activated when we engage with music. Everything from the front of our brain to the back of our brain, the emotional areas, the memory processing areas, the visual areas, you know, amongst many other processes. Scientists also know that there's a lot of different kind of chemicals released in our body when we listen to music, including oxytocin, which is really the love hormone. So this all together leads us to believe that music is not only important to get pleasure, but also really critical for our health and for our education. Lately, the use of technology in music and education has grown exponentially, and more so in the recent times, and continues to develop rapidly. So for this first episode of Talk Brainy to Me, I'm very, very excited to get a unique perspective on the integration of music technology in education with Mr. Mahesh Kale, who's here. Mahesh is an expert Hindustani classical vocalist and has received numerous accolades, which we don't really have time to cover today. But the more importantly is that he's working at the forefront of the domain. He's an engineer, an avid technology user, and a passionate teacher himself. So Mahesh is really the ideal candidate for today's episode and for today's conversation. So just to give an overview, I've kind of broken up our conversation into 3 sections. We're going to be talking first about your personal and musical experience, Mahesh. Then we're going to kind of go into your thoughts about, you know, how music is influencing education and technology. And then in the last portion, we're going to go over some broader applications and what the future of music really looks like moving forward. Before we proceed, I just want to make a quick note that we are taking live questions here today. So as our conversation proceeds, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat on Zoom. At the end, we will have a good chunk of time for questions and answers from the audience that we'll be taking. So please don't hesitate to put in your questions. So with that, you know, I want to really get started with the first question. It can seem a little basic, but I want to ask you, how do you define music and what is the impact it's had on your life?
First off, thank you so much for inviting me here. It's a little intimidating to be in a talk that says Talk Brainy to Me. All I am is a musician. I have been an engineer in what seems like my past life now. So this is going to be brushing up a lot of those concepts. Now, as far as your question goes, what is music? I think it's very hard to pinpoint on what music is. You can define it in various different modes. But to me, music is fundamentally a natural expression of your emotions that goes beyond the spoken word. I feel, there is an amazing common denomination in all of us across the world. In that we all smile and laugh when we feel joy or happiness. We all cry when we feel sorrow. So the baseline of emotions is the same. Given that it is the same, I feel the music is an extension of expressing ourselves. And while it is culturally a little unique, the fundamental idea is to be able to express yourself without having the bounds of spoken word. So that is what I think music is to me.
So that leads me to believe that it's had, you know, a great impact on your life in various ways as well, you know, in terms of expression and that sort of thing. So kind of taking it from there, you mentioned this as part of your response, you know, you were an engineer previously. I kind of want to touch upon that, which is really interesting aspect. I don't know how many people know, but you have multiple graduate degrees in engineering. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So with that in mind, you know, being a highly trained engineer and a vocalist, are there any parallels you can draw from studying engineering and studying music in various ways?
Uh, I guess so. Every really good engineer at the end of his quest becomes an artist in his own right. I would call Mr. Elon Musk an artist at what he does, because thinking of creating the first ever electrical vehicle, from the concept to execution to making it one of the most sought after vehicles, especially in the Western world, in the Bay Area. And I think it's a hallmark of being an artist. And every musician or an artist is in a way a good engineer, because especially a performing musician, because what you're doing is you're assimilating all the information that you gather in your riyaz room, that we can call the classroom, and from that theory to taking that music as a fundamental science, to taking it to the performance arena, where you kind of get into this tweaking and feedback mechanism and tweaking a stereotype product that can then be taken across the globe in the form of a performance. So I do see a remarkable similarity between an engineer and a musician.
That's really interesting, kind of this aspect of creativity that's involved in both things. So kind of
Yeah.
that I obviously, when I was doing background research for our conversation, listened to a large number of your performances, all of which I thoroughly enjoyed. And in your live performances as well, and they're a lot of fun, and just you can feel the magic, which I think is amazing. And so one of the things that I noticed, just as a small example, is that every time you sang the song Abira Gulala, which is a popular devotional song, I've heard you sing it at numerous places. I noticed that every single time you sang it, it sounded different. Now, I don't know all the intricacies and nuances, but to my ears, it sounded very different. And perhaps this aspect of improvisation and elaboration that exists in Hindustani classical music gives you the ability to do this. So just as a kind of a broad question, I was wondering, can you walk us through your creative singing process? What's happening?
Well, it's going to be a little hard, because it's kind of trying to help you walk with my impulse, because that's what drives my music. Two things, while I mean, all of us are on Earth, are isolated by the atmosphere, but also have a connection with the bigger universe. Now, given that we all are similar, we are living the same life. But if you really think about it, we do not breathe in the same air every day, because it's going to be recirculated from different places. In the same way, even if on the face of it I'm singing the same song, it's like taking a hike. Let's say we're going to San Antonio Rancho, it's not too far from where you live. If I'm on that hike, even if I take the same trail, the clouds are going to be different. The temperature is going to be different. The sunlight is going to be different. And according to the season, the trees are going to be different. They are sometimes in their springtime, sometimes they are in their fall colors and all of that. And if I were to, as a human that is trying to respond to all the stimuli around me, I'm going to be in a very different space in all of these different scenarios. That is exactly what happens to me when I'm singing. It's like picking a trail, saying, this is where I'm going to go today. But once I pick that trail, I'm not hell-bent on staying the course. If I see something, like if I were walking on the path of Abira Gulala, and if there is one particular line where I see a beautiful flower, then I want to stop and smell the flower. Or if there's a big tree somewhere in the second stanza, I want to go and hug that tree. And it might be a different flower or a different tree that attracts my attention. That is typically what you do. To get to that place, I believe first you want to make sure that you hone your skill to be able to. So I want to make sure that I have the stamina to walk, make sure that I have the right kind of shoes and all of that. I'm drawing analogies because they sometimes help understand the domain a little better. So in the classroom, in the Riyaz room that I would do, I would go after all the exercises that are going to enable me to be in the best shape so that I can get on any hike and be able to achieve what I need to achieve physically. So once you have that skill set, it's quite ironical or oxymoronic, if that's a word. First you learn the art, you learn the grammar, you learn the skill, and then you try to escape it without losing it, so that you are all there completely vulnerable to the situation that you are put in. The only familiarity is the thread of the song, which kind of becomes invisible in that abstract space. And then you start exploring the space as a response to what you feel. So even if I am kind of creating music, I am also responding to this stimuli that I have in my mind. So it's a beautiful, and that's why I said in the beginning, it's a little tricky to really walk you through, because every single time I sing the song, even if it is the same song, it feels like I'm walking for the first time.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's kind of this exploratory journey of sorts. Is that kind of true?
Yeah, it's just like life. I mean, even if it is, yeah, art mimics life. It is always the moment the exploration stops, the life stops. So does music. So it is always an exploration.
Yeah. And so, if you had to kind of tell us, like, what's the experience like when you're going through this, exploratory path? Like, is there some kind of emotion that you feel, or not really? Or, yeah, you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, you always do feel emotions there, as you mentioned in your opening statement. Music accesses those places of your memory that sometimes get unlocked on their own, and it is wonderful to be in that. It's like discovering something when you don't expect it. I remember I was in a concert and I sang something, again guided by whatever my response to the stimulus inside, and I felt I was experiencing an episode from my past, and I was surprised by that particular emotion. So sometimes it's that, sometimes it's the emotion you feel is of stillness. On the outset, you are doing what you are doing. I like to engage my audience, and as you mentioned, I like to sing with me because it helps spread happiness because of the release of the, what was that again?
Oxytocin, the love hormone.
Oxytocin, because of the release of, yeah, the love hormone. It's easier to say that. So I like to spread love through my music. But while I'm doing that, there are also moments where the core of me kind of steps back a little bit. I can see myself doing all of that, but I also feel a very unique calm or unique peace in my mind, a stillness. So sometimes that emotion where you are devoid of an emotion, or sometimes feeling an overwhelming emotion even when you're doing the same song 100 times. It's kind of a gamut of, it's kind of it's like as I said, it's like experiencing a life, a new life every single time. That life starts from the time you get up the day of thinking I have a concert, and then you taking blessings of your parents and stepping out. From there, you go to the green room with the accompanist. Some thoughts start germinating. When you go on stage, those thoughts kind of either are put to action or they are completely abandoned for what you feel at that time. So it's almost like I'm living this life. That music is also a part of that life. Sometimes in the form of a tune on the stage, but many times in the form of a dormant thought that is being formed as my life is taking me through different experiences. So that is how I could best explain it.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. I want to just kind of touch upon something that you said that was really interesting, which is also interesting in terms of education and also in terms of a little bit of what we know. There's this idea that a lot of musicians talk about, and I saw you touching on it just a little bit about how oftentimes they'll visualize music or conceptualize music when they're singing or they're playing. So I'm wondering, do you build some sort of mental model or mental workflow in your mind when you sing? And does this affect your ability as a performer and your experience as a performer?
Well, what affects your ability as a performer? I will divide it into two modes. One, the skill mode. That is where the process or having a model helps. But if you want to harness and discover beauty, you have to let go of that process when you feel inspired to. So I try to do both. I have a schematic to make sure that there is some form or some kind of method to my madness. But when I'm on stage, I always go for madness more than method. The more method becomes like it's like once the curtain goes off, that's kind of, I want to get into a space. So the presentation or the songs that I am doing, because they are composed songs, they're pre-composed songs, they automatically come with their own structures. Mm-hmm. But whenever within a structure I feel tempted to go beyond the basic space that the structure affords, I like to do that because it is the joy of discovery that I experience. And if I cannot experience a joy, then I cannot give joy to the audience. And I believe because of the love hormone, people are in a very compassionate space and they do appreciate the honesty of the effort of trying to discover something. And I love to share that with my audience.
So, what you talked about in terms of your experience obviously is really incredible. It sounds like this really complex, very dynamic way of experiencing music almost as a holistic, kind of all-encompassing, experience. And now I kind of want to start talking about other people who are involved in this process, the musicians and other folks. So from the neuroscience world and studies, we know that musicians' brainwaves start synchronizing or oscillating in synchrony when they are playing instruments together or they're singing together. Now there's this very, very interesting concept of jugalbandi that exists. And so, what I'm really wondering is, do you think a musician's experience with this give and take interaction, whether it's with another musician or with another singer, can be helpful for developing collaboration or facilitating communication of sorts? These are things that are very, very important in a classroom as well.
Well, I think it really depends on the intent of the people who are making music together. I've seen some one-upmanship happening, which kind of looks like a battle. But if you have the right mix on the stage, I have had for some fabulous jugalbandis with friends of mine, where the intent is to just share the joy of music the way you see it. It's again, if you were to follow up on the same example that I gave, if you are going on a trail with your friend, then you show them, look there, there's a beautiful view there. And then that friend, can you look at there, the sun, the way it's moving with the clouds, that is also beautiful. So if the motive is to share the joy of discovery from your eyes with everyone else that is in your group, then you have so much to look at. It's like you have 4 pair of eyes. I'm in a jugalbandi with another gentleman. 4 pair of eyes instead of just, 2 pair of eyes instead of just 1. And that always makes it beautiful. Addressing your earlier comment though, it does look very sophisticated and evolved and very complex. But when you are doing certain things, if you just try to analyze the sight or smell or listening to stuff. All of these are going to be quite evolved if you try to analyze them.
Yeah.
But as a human being, as a musician, all I'm doing is I'm just singing. So it's very easy for me to do. As long as the focus of all the people, going back to the Jugalbandi question, as long as the idea of being there and in a genuine way to be happy or try to create a space that is of compassion and happiness, I think it just grows with the number of people together.
Yeah, definitely. And what we talk about, when we think about education, is that collaboration or collaborative learning in the classroom really can be meaningful and create deep learning experiences. And in a sense, it sounds like that's similar, where if the group of musicians is together, it can possibly lead to a deeper experience. Is that true?
Absolutely. I mean, inspiration has to have a stimulus. It is not always going to come from within. Even if it has to come from within, it has to respond to an article that you're reading or a piece of music that you're thinking, which is kind of external before it enters your head. So I think it is utmost important to have a collaborative perspective to things. Thinking of a classroom, you don't have to make all the mistakes to learn from them. If you are in a room, again, you might not have the same questions that someone else would think. That's a fascinating question. How did they think about it? And that kind of propels you in a direction that you might not intuitively get into. So I do believe collaboration is a big part. Even as this is a solo art or a monophilic art, by and large, the Indian classical music that I represent, you'll see that I'm doing my thing and the tabla player is supporting what I'm doing and the harmonium playing is kind of shadowing what I'm doing. But even in that space, the tabla is responding in a rhythm language to the melody language that I am doing. And when that happens, it creates an input to me, which is coming from a different perspective, even if it is fusing with the stream that I'm doing. And then the harmonium player sometimes does a phrase work that kind of makes me think in a direction that I may not otherwise go on my own. So even in its monophilic sense, you do see a lot of collaboration. And this is only happening on the stage side of things. Now, if you are doing a concert and you see that the audience is responding to a certain, let's say, a certain theme that you're improvising, then you feel inspired to go beyond and start exploring more into that theme to make sure that, again, the happiness or the love hormone is, kind of, it goes off. So it is, I mean, think about it, we are all in collaboration. Even in solitude, we are in collaboration with what we think is us. Because say my hand, my hair, my head, we don't know where me is. So the quest is to collaborate with everything of mine to find me. So I think collaboration is at most important.
Absolutely. And with that, I want to kind of turn towards a question that I think is on a lot of students' minds, certainly, and maybe on other people's minds too. So a lot of students and people generally, I think, tend to listen to music when they're studying or they're working. Do you think this has an effect on what they're doing from your perspective?
It definitely has an effect, but I don't know if it always have a conducive effect. I don't know why I'm saying this. If I'm listening to instrumental music, most times I'm good. But the moment I start listening to vocal music, I kind of get engaged in that as my primary activity and make what is my primary as my tertiary. But but there has been cases. So I get a bunch of messages saying, I get tagged in these Instagram stories where there's someone that is working on a PowerPoint presentation and they have a phone that is playing my song on it, or there is someone that says that I had a big meeting and I wanted to prep for it, so I wanted to just cool myself down, so I played a piece of your music. So it certainly affects. Look, the whole premise of music is to have engagement. I mean, it's
Yeah.
an emotional appeal with an emotional response. So in that, it is going to have an effect. So it does. In most cases, I would like to believe it has a good effect, uh, barring the cases where I said if you get too engrossed in your tertiary activity, then it might be a little tricky.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, this is obviously kind of a question of interest to a lot of scientists. It's widely applicable, right, in our classrooms, in our own lives, and things like that. So it's really interesting to have kind of your perspective and see what that says about the data that's out there as well. So that's awesome. So now I want to kind of ask a question out of personal interest because I get a chance to talk to you. Our brains are known to be what we call plastic, meaning that the connections in our brain are able to change as we learn different information. And we're really able to adapt to the environment that we are in a given space. Having said that, there are certain periods in our life which are called sensitive periods in which we're able to learn certain pieces of information better than other pieces of information. Now, I'm fascinated by people who are able to sing. I unfortunately am not one of them. So really what I want to ask you is, have I missed the boat on becoming a singer? Or do you think there's a certain point in your life or in anyone's life at which, you can't really learn singing at the same level or, something like that?
So I'll try to take a second pass at the defining music. That was the first question, okay? And that kind of answers your current question also. So music is the melodious sound that a breath forms. I'm talking about vocal music. As long as you have your breath going, I don't think you have missed the boat. Because see, and I truly believe it. Again, it will depend on if you wanted to make a career out of it, then it is a different discussion. Then we'll have to make sure what your aptitude is, how much time you're willing to put, and all of those things. But fundamentally, if you can, I might sound like a hopeless romantic, but it is true. That is what I believe. As long as you can appreciate the beauty of a sunrise or a sunset, or you can have a good peaceful time when you listen to crashing waves, or even just biking somewhere, I think you can sing. Again, what I'm trying to hint at is anyone that wants to express. Music is such a beautiful form because all the expressions of even hate and anger and all those negative forms, they are converted into a beautiful melody that is appreciable. So you haven't missed the boat at all. Neither has any of the viewers that are 80 years old, 90 years old. It is an activity, as I said, that is a mode of self-expression. As long as you want to express, you have not missed it.
Fabulous. So I'll be calling you after this for a lesson soon.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right, great. So with that, I kind of want to, turn towards talking about technology just a little bit. You have perspectives as a vocalist, of course, and also as an engineer and also as a teacher. Do you think that technology can really be used to enhance our musical experience or help students learn in a certain way?
Of course, it has always. I mean, look, even the Tanpura, it is some kind of engineering and technology, right? I mean, not in the sense of the word that we are in. It's a pumpkin gourd that is harnessed from somewhere, then it's excavated, then it's made to sit in sun and become solid, and then you take a piece of wood, then they form strings, metal strings, go into bridges and take them, and then there is these little threads that try to find a tangential thing so that so there's a lot of technology even there. Now, if we are talking about the technology as it appears, see the life uh, of a human being or of all of us as a society, it keeps on evolving. Okay? And every single place, whatever we are offered is what we try to leverage it to further what we can do in a better way. Okay. As a when I was growing up, we did not have cellular phones. Thinking of it now, it's really difficult because what if you had a flat tire? What are you going to do? I'm sure the kids today will be flabbergasted with, oh my God, what would have happened? But we did just fine. But when the cell phones arrived, it becomes very convenient. Now, after that, smartphones came. Now, with cell phones, you could call some person to fetch a person that could fix it. Now, with smartphones, you can look up the closest garage to make sure that you can even page them to send someone to fix things. So, technology is always going to assist if you know how to use it. In art also, talking of MKSM, that the Mahesh Kale School of Music that I've set up, some things that would have been impossible to do a few years ago, I can do now. Because when I teach, in one window, there is someone from England. In the neighboring window, there is someone from Scotland. In the neighboring window, there's someone from Germany and Switzerland and New York. Now, if you were to imagine a classroom where people are sitting in chairs next to this guy is from England, that guy is from New York, isn't that fascinating? It's fascinating.
Amazing.
But now it is possible. And at real time in geographies that you would have never imagined, people are consuming and learning the same piece of material. To me, it is mind-blowing. Even in the concert performances, we have this app that we use instead of drone, because you can't carry your tanpuras everywhere, right? Especially in airlines where sometimes they hurt the instruments when it is checked in. So you cannot risk that. So you have a Bluetooth speaker that is paired to a cell phone, which is playing an app that plays the tanpura. So that is how technology works. When I teach, I engage with my students in different. I use WhatsApp. Supposed to send their homework on WhatsApp. I quickly send them a voice note. So the only thing is you want to make sure that the technology that you are using is used to serve. Sometimes the line is very thin. You quickly end up indulging in it more than, again, talking about tertiary and primary activities. So if I went into the WhatsApp group trying to check homeworks, but then again on another WhatsApp group I was forwarded a YouTube link, then I clicked that YouTube link and it is a song. So I think it is legit to be able to do that, because I'm still doing something with music. But that suddenly goes into a funny cat video that I might click, and then that cat video becomes some other funny video, and then I lose my space. So as long as you have the self-discipline of trying to stay away from indulging, but trying to use leveraging of the technology, it's a great asset that I think everyone should use.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with, like you noted, the advancement of technology in all these different realms, from apps to tanpuras to being able to teach online, also advent of technology and various types of audio equipment. It's
I mean, like now, what we call technology, what we call technology now won't be called technology in a few years. I mean, even you, how old were you when you got your cell phone? It was a privilege in my time.
Yeah.
I'm sure it would be when you were in high school or something like that.
High school. It was high school, right.
So it was a privilege some time ago. When I was growing up, I didn't even have a landline. People used to call my neighbor. Is Mahesh there? And the neighbor would go ding dong, and you have a phone call. So now, nobody asks, do you have a phone? They ask, What is your phone number? It's an assumption that everyone has a phone. In my time, having a computer, my brother, I remember he was doing his engineering and he got his first ever computer that arrived to our place was when he was in his second year of engineering. Now, if you ask a 2-year-old kid, that 2-year-old kid will know how to unlock the phone, fire up YouTube and go to those whatever animation videos and watch them. So what we call technology is going to be a common thing in not too many years from now. So technology is going to be a continuous asset of our life. It depends on how we develop it and how we engage with it. That is going to shape our future.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to touch upon something you said in your answer, and that was kind of this idea of technology being able to break borders, literally in the sense that you have people from a variety of countries.
All right.
So, I want to kind of tie that to and talk about this idea of expanding and making classical music just a little bit more accessible. So I'll tell you a little bit what I mean. Oftentimes classical music is perceived to be almost like an exclusive club of sorts, right? And it makes the general public a little bit apprehensive towards it. So what do you think we can do to make classical music accessible to everyone, but especially younger individuals?
2 steps. Yes, it has been an exclusive club, but that does not mean that that club cannot have affiliations in different geographies. It's a simple way.
Right.
Increase your base. But I think, if you look at it, so it's believed to be formed in temples, then it went to the courts that were, court musicians used to serve the king. Now the king is going to invite these special people and only they get to listen to classical music. Up until a time now, you can just buy a ticket to any concert and you can go. But sense of exclusivity still kind of permeates through the times. This is on the practical side of things. On the musical side of things, it is for an Indian trying to appreciate a pasta. For someone that is used to indulge in so much of spice, pasta is like, hey, are they missing something here? That's how I felt the first time. I'm serious. But now over the years, I'm like, oh wow, that's wonderful. Just that little bit of flavor is outstanding. So you have to kind of graduate in the way you can. This is from the perspective of the observer. Now, how you would do, one, you want to make as many affiliations as possible, but also you have to understand from an engineer's perspective, you have to segment your market and you have to know your market. Who are you doing this for? What is your product? What is it supposed to do? And who is going to consume your product? Simply put. Now, if my audience is going to be, well, first let me make a statement. It doesn't matter how long of a heritage your art has. It is always at a risk if it is not adopted by the next generation. Okay, because eventually the current generation is going to perish. The next generation is going to be responsible to take it ahead or not. So then, what I would like to do is I want to make sure that I position it in a way that it does not become intimidating in its exclusivity. Yeah. So if there's a kid who is at the bottom of a stairs, and at the end of that staircase there is a beautiful view. As a musician, I want to go down, reach out to that kid, pick them up, and then show them the view that is at the end of this. That I think is the job of me as a musician, to make sure that that view, which is Indian classical music, is available and accessible to the next generation. So what you want to do, and you can do it in various different ways. Sometimes you camouflage it in the form of a popular music that they know, or you do collaboration with jazz, so it stands out for the jazz musicians. They know jazz. What is not jazz is classical music. Or sometimes you have a movie song that is based on classical music, or you make shorter presentations, theme presentations like Melange that I had done, which kind of tells the story behind the classical music in an engaging, interesting way. So these are all different ways that I would engage the audience in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that people like you and others are kind of taking on these initiatives that makes it more appealing in certain ways to a broader audience. Speaking of which, thinking about broader applications of music, I want to ask you, do you think there's a way in which music, and specifically vocal music, can be best used as a form of therapy in various ways, to maybe help enhance focus or help special needs students? What are your thoughts about this?
Absolutely. As I said, when I'm in concerts, I just sing, but it has a very different effect and impact on people. I've gotten messages from people saying I was feeling suicidal, and the last thing I wanted to do was listen to my favorite song, which was yours, and I decided to change my mind. From that to someone saying my grandfather had a multiple skull fracture, and the only thing that he kept on responding to was your music. So obviously, if you get bunch of these messages, I don't think I have the capability to heal, but if my music is serving that space, then I don't want to deny the possibility that it has. If you ask me personally, see, it would be very boring for a musician to only be a performer for 4-8 hours at the most every week and then not be able to do anything. So if I'm not able to engage with music in a way that goes way beyond just trying to perform, then it would really be a disappointing thing to be a full-time musician. All other full-time people work at least 40 hours a week, and you won't have to do it. So when I engage with music, if you ask me about my personal, I don't necessarily engage with music to serve a transaction. It is always because it grounds me. It gives me the hope and a feeling that everything is going to be okay. Just being in the company of music. That is what it does. It does have a healing aspect because the entertainment aspect has a lot of, as I said, monetary potential. That is what is being harnessed most right now. I really hope that we are able to create a product that goes towards healing, has tremendous commercial potential also, so that it actually comes to the fore. But the reason I'm saying this is, I mean, at the crux of it, just like yoga, and music is sometimes called as Nada Yoga, it is a way of life. It's a few things you do for the sanity and for the well-being of yours. It has nothing to do with what you can make out of it and how can you make a transaction out of it. So there is tremendous potential in music beyond the basic entertainment appeal that it has.
Absolutely. So with that, I want to ask you one last question before, we transition to open it up to the audience. Being, as Sridhar mentioned in kind of the beginning, being at the forefront of your field, a lot of people, of course, perceive you to be very, very successful, and rightly so. But I want to know from you, at this point in your life, what does success mean for you? And was it different at another point?
Yes. Success is always like it's like a horizon. When you go closer, it goes farther. To me, something that, so I'm both successful and not. to me, if I'm able to feel happy around music, I'm successful. That's in the simple thing. Now, if you ask me how does success change? Now, my surroundings have changed over time. Everyone's surrounding change. So now, if I'm in a concert, uh, which is an engagement, which is a professional engagement, that I need to be mindful of the fact that I have been professionally engaged to make sure that people are happy. But the way I define success is if I can make people happy listening to what I feel happy singing, that is success.
Yep.
So, and in that, everyone is a struggling musician. It doesn't matter how successful they are. Everyone is struggling. And struggle is what makes it real and alive. So I want all the struggles. I want new challenges to overcome. With those, the horizons broaden. And uh, it really, I mean, I'm glad I've been able to achieve what I have, but there is just so much to do as in engineering. Who would have thought that we could even think of going to Mars now? It was just not possible with the speeds, with the engines, with the time it would take, and all of that. Now it is a possibility, and people are actually buying a one-way ticket to Mars. So even in music, uh, is- uh, we have some latency problems, but if that technology is solved, which I'm very sure it will be, I can be sitting in India and collaborating with someone that is sitting in San Francisco real time, which can be projected on a stage in a holographic way. And I'm looking forward to those challenges. I'm looking forward to doing things that have not been done. And I would love to be an ambassador of Indian classical music, to be on that stage performing with whoever else.
Fabulous. Well, that's really, really great. With the remaining time that we have, I want to move on to some questions that we have gotten from the audience. First is a question from Professor Chandan Dasgupta, and he wants to know, what are some of the basic rules or heuristics that you keep in mind while going on this musical experience?
So the first thing thank you so much, Professor Gupta, for your question. The first thing I always remind myself is that when I sit on stage, I'm actually a representative of a thousands of year old art. And in that, I want to make sure that I'm responsible enough in what I do. And I'm mindful of that every single time. The second thing is the core essence of the art, which is to spread happiness, spread love. Uh, and the third is trying to appeal to a wide section of people. The challenge that we face in audiences is we cannot choose. Now, I'm giving a lecture I'm doing an interview at IIT Bombay, so I kind of know everyone is going to have a high IQ, they have an engineering bent, and then I'm able to draw examples that can engage them in a certain way. But when I'm in a concert hall, there's kids from 6 years to people that are 80 years old, from different walks of life, from different. So to be able to cover and make sure that there is enough for everyone in the audience is another thing that you have to keep in mind. And like I said, the bottom line is, if you ask me what I do, the shallow answer would be I am a music professional. The deeper answer would be I'm a student on a lifelong quest of Indian classical music. But the very basic answer would be I am someone that wants to spread happiness. My modus operandi is music. So that is something that I always make sure that I want to have fun. I want to make it a pleasurable experience every single time I face the audience.
Amazing. So the next question that I want to ask you is from Lakshmi Ganesh through our Zoom chat, and she is asking, as a musician, how do you tackle capability versus intent? In students, we see somewhat of a struggle, especially PhD students. It's a long, kind of difficult process. So getting your thoughts on this would be great.
See, I think they are directly proportional to each other. So if you have intent, and intent strong enough, it doesn't matter how much you stumble, your capability is always going to go up. And I made a simple rule: as long as the number of attempts is more than the number of failures, you'll always succeed. And the
Yeah.
intent gives you that. So
Yeah.
capability is always going to be a sliding scale trying to get to where you intend to.
Fabulous. We have another question from a student here that we collected ahead of time. And the student is asking, you know, when you sing, it's a very difficult thing. It engages your core to a certain extent. Do you think you can get a six pack by singing a lot or singing well?
That's a very creative question. I'm sure whoever asked this question has a very artistic mind, a very creative mind. I probably must not be singing hard enough because I don't have one yet. Maybe two packs somewhere hiding beneath. Uh, it is engaging, but to make any activity scalable, you want to make sure that it is efficient. With what
Yeah.
efficient, it means you have to put in least amount of work to for your longevity. I do not have a six pack. I desire it. I will sing a little harder to give me
Okay.
that six pack. Thank you for your
Well,
question.
darn, I was hoping to get one after I start learning from you. So
Maybe if I'm singing with every sit up I do an alap, then that would engage my core even better.
yeah, definitely. So we have our next question from Himanshu Bahirat, and he is asking, can you please say something about the role of a guru and finding the right shiksha for transferring knowledge to carry a legacy forward?
You know, I had a conversation very recently with Ustad Zakir Hussain. And in that conversation, he said something really fabulous, like he always does. He said, the guru should be inspired by the student to teach. And that was a completely opposite from
Yeah,
what we have
wow.
always seen. What is the role of the guru? The role of the guru, you know, sometimes it's a different relationship for different people of what I'm about to explain. Sometimes you have this 4 a.m. friend. You know, no matter what crisis you are in, whatever, that friend is always going to be available for you. Or
Yeah.
sometimes you have, sometimes it's your dad, sometimes it's your mom. You know, it doesn't matter how much you mess around, they always got your back.
Yeah.
Or there is sometimes this person who is so sagacious that you know, that person knows everything. No matter what question I ask him or her, they are always going to have an answer. Or even sometimes this God, when you have so much faith in that, I'm going to keep on praying and I know I will be blessed one day. So a guru is someone that is all of these rolled into one. That is what guru is to me. And the relationship between the guru and the shishya is, I wish there were more gurukuls around. It's just a beautiful relationship. It is the common theme is the interest. In this case, it's music, and the care for the guru, like I said, is everyone is a mortal.
Yeah.
But what you love, you want to make immortal. And if that is music, you always try to look for channels you can create beyond you to take it to immortality. That is the crux of Gurukul. The Guru wants to make sure that he passes on his knowledge to these worthy disciples, and it's a weeding process. Uh, and these disciples will then, because they have something invaluable that they have received with so much love, care, and sometimes disciplining from their teachers, they want to make sure that they pass it on to the next generation. It is like,
Yeah.
you know, when we have these digital formats. First, there were VHS tapes, then we started doing VCDs, then came DVDs. Now you have Blu-ray, and then you have 1080p HD, and then it's 2K, and then it's 4K, and then even with the sound, you have the surround sound, you have immersive sound, and all of these things. So what we are doing is we are actually taking the information and we are making that it is upward compatible. So to me,
Yeah.
this Gurukul system is we want to make it upward compatible as the years progress. That is how I can best express it.
Amazing. Yeah, and the Gurukul system is, is amazing, and what a great kind of tradition that we have in the arts.
Beautiful.
And I'm sure it leads to such an immersive experience.
Yeah, that is what makes
completely
it
immersive
best.
experience.
Many times, when the subject becomes life is when you get the best learning. And in a Gurukul system, the life is the subject. When I was with my Guruji, 4 a.m. we would be doing music. Even over lunch, we will be talking about music. Even while we are taking naps, there will be conversations about music. When you're traveling, it will be about music. So it just becomes, it consumes you. It tells you how vast of a subject it is beyond the mere little melody that meets your ear.
Yes, absolutely. And that's something that's great at, a university as well. You really can stay there. You can live with your peers. You really get that kind of experience, and it's fabulous.
Yeah.
So I want to just ask you one last audience question before we kind of wrap up our session today. So Rajeshri is asking, why are hand gestures so extensively used while singing, especially in classical singing? Does it make any difference when you try to sing without moving your hands or your body?
You can. If that was a guideline, or if that was something you were made to do. But, the first instrument, the way it is described in Bharatanatyam Shastra, which is the first written scripture on in classical music, is they call the first instrument to be the Gatra Veena. Gatra is skin. So translating it, the body is the instrument.
Yeah.
The core expression happens through your voice because it has a sound. The instrument does not have a sound. But the whole instrument is engaged in expressing that music that is produced through your voice. Now, why more in classical music is, as I said before, it is an impulse art. So, for some people that might not know this, you only start with a minute or a minute and a half of fixed composition. And using the guideline of the rag, you actually end up composing and discovering spaces every single time. So it is a journey that you take on with every single time. Now, because it's a first journey every single time, and because you're composing and you are singing and you are being spontaneous, and when you're doing this in front of people, you're engaging them, it is such an evolved activity that maybe mere voice cannot engage, and hence you have to put everything you have. So that's what ends up happening.
Yeah, one quick thing I'll say is there is scientific literature out there to say that we have correspondences between a lot of our different sensor modalities. And one of the ones that is there is that oftentimes, higher pitch is associated to higher elevation. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of what I noticed is the hands kind of go up and down.
That's correct.
In that way. Yeah.
I'll share a funny story on this.
Yeah.
I actually was singing for the first time in UC Santa Barbara, where I was doing my master's in multimedia engineering. And after the concert, there was someone, non-Indian person that came to me and then say, "Oh, what wonderful music. And I also loved your choreography." And I had a good laugh. I didn't know what to say. I was like, "Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed my choreography just as much as my music."
Yeah. So I'm sorry. We have one last question that I'm seeing is a very nice one. My team is especially pointing it out to me. So, Swati asked to everyone, and to you especially, few people who get up late in the morning, if they listen to morning ragas like Todi, Bhairav, Lalat at a time of the day when they feel sleepy. Is it an impact of a Komal Rishabh or Komal Gandhar and a composition of the raga that has an impact on people in a certain way. And, you know, the other question, I'll just kind of tag this on here, that we have gotten a lot consistently is, can Mahesh sir please sing a little bit?
Do you want me to sing Todi? Is that the intention? It was tag along question.
No. That's,
I would if it was
no.
an interview at night. So let's answer the first question. You know, I wish there was more scientific research. I would be happy if there is any collaborators in the audience right now. There is clinical research that has some of the effect that is validated, and there is some illness therapy kind of a thing that then the music has been devised into. It is quite likely the Komal notes or the flat notes, as we know, they always make a somber or a peaceful kind of a ambience, and then that is very conducive for a slumber party. So I can understand why you would feel a little sleepy. Todi, Bhairav, Lalat can make you sleepy, but it also depends on one, the personality types, two, the activity that they are doing before, at the time of the music, and where they are in their life. So it's a little bit of a concoction of different forces that are at play here. But I think it will be very useful to identify, kind of, you know, take each piece out of it and identify what this particular note does on its own, and then how does this particular note behave in a certain association of certain swar, which we call ragas. So it's a fascinating study. At the outset, yes, but I think there is more scientific data that we need to validate it.
Yeah. Fabulous. And then, you know, coming to the second question I asked you, perhaps instead of leaving it open-ended, one idea that my team had here is perhaps you can just demonstrate something that comes to your mind when I say humility.
Humility, I'm going to fire my Tanpura for this, which sits on my iPhone. I don't know what. So humility is, when you said humility, because we are all suffering from pandemic all throughout the world, it's trying to pray for everyone instead of trying to just look out for your own. That is what I think. And there is this song that was composed by my Guruji, Pandit Jitendra Abhisheki, for a Marathi play, which has the spirit of that. Sarvatmaka Sarveshwara, Je Jagi Jagate Taya, Madhe Mana Karuna Kara, Sarvatmaka Sarveshwara. Let everyone find happiness. Whoever is living in this world, please call them yours own and bless all of us living on this earth. I'll just hum this little thing. Sarvatmaka Sarveshwara, Sarvatmaka Sarveshwara, Gangadhara Shiva Sundara, Gangadhara Shiva Sundara, Vede Jagi Jagate Taya, Vede Jagi Jagate Taya, Madhe Mana Karuna Kara, Madhe Mana Karuna Kara, Sarvatmaka सर्वात्मका सर्वात्मका सर्वेश्वरा.
Wow, fabulous. And I think that's the perfect note to conclude this conversation on. And for the closing remarks, I would like to pass it off to Sridhar again.
Wow. So I'm totally spellbound, and there really is not much to say in terms of closing remarks. No, I just wish we could continue for more time. So, nevertheless, since it is my sort of official role, I think the first person I want to really thank here is Radhika, for conceptualizing this podcast series and executing it so brilliantly. And I'm told that this conceptualization happened in a classroom, so the thanks kind of spreads to the students also. And for finding such a illustrious person for having the conversation with. And then of course I do want to thank our guest. I really don't have words to thank you. I mean, there are a lot of insightful points that you have made, which I have actually noted down. Like, let me just say two of them which really caught my attention. One of them is like, indulging versus leveraging of technology. I mean, that's a phrase that I am going to continue using now. And the other one is that, even when we are in solitude, we are collaborating with ourselves and trying to figure out who is this me. I mean, that really blew me away. And the final song of gratitude and humility and seeking for blessings, that was really the cherry on top. So thank you very much for being with us. And we do hope to engage with you a little more deeper at some other time. Maybe Radhika will do a more in-depth series later. Yeah.
Certainly.
So thanks a lot very much. And if you do come to Mumbai sometime, I see that you are from Pune, but I'm sure you must be traveling sometime. We would love to host you for a while and continue to have conversations late into the night.
Certainly. I'll take you up on that offer.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Mahesh, again. And thank you, everyone. So with that, I just kind of want to wrap up and, have a great rest of your afternoon. And
Radhika, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, of course, not a problem at all. And, to everyone and to you, I wish I could keep asking you questions, and I'm sure everyone thinks the same. Unfortunately, we weren't able to take all the audience questions that we got. So I apologize on everyone's behalf, but please feel free to submit those questions earlier as well. And I'm sure
these natural collisions are not happening as much as they would earlier. So this talking about collaboration, this interdisciplinary talks of being inspired by and inspiring by sharing your thoughts is very valuable in today's world of pace and chaos.
Okay, thank you very much, and have a pleasant rest of the night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
गगन चमके भ्रमित भ्रमर करि गुंजन हलके अधीर मन मम जणु सरित जल करि